The night wasn't like any night I'd ever known. I don't mean the kind of pitch black you get when the power goes out in a storm, or when clouds smother the moon. This was different. It was as if the whole sky had been erased, scraped clean of stars, the moon, even the faintest hint of distant lights. Out the narrow slit window of the Crestfall shelter, the world looked dipped in ink, a solid wall of black pressing right up against the glass. No depth, no horizon, just a void. I pressed my palm against the heavy steel door, more to ground myself than anything else. The cold of the metal bled into my skin. Beneath it, I could feel the faint vibration of the backup generator humming away in the bunker's guts, a reminder that we weren't completely cut off. But the air inside was already stale, tinged with the faint bite of ozone and something else, something coppery and sweet that clung to the back of the tongue. The kind of taste that makes you think of pennies left too long in your mouth, or the metallic smell of blood. I swallowed against it, though the taste didn't fade. Behind me, the others were restless. I could hear Alara's voice, low and soft as she murmured something to Jenna, who sat on the floor with her son clutched tight in her arms. Little Leo hadn't said a word since the darkness came. He kept his face pressed into his mother's chest, trembling at every sound like a rabbit that knew the fox was close. His tiny shoulders shook with every ragged breath. Jenna's arms curled around him protectively, her knuckles white with the strain. Alara had that nurse's calm about her, the way she could make her voice a balm even in the middle of chaos. But even in the dim bunker light, I could see her eyes were too wide, her movements a little too precise, like someone pretending not to panic. She didn't fool me. I'd heard that tone in countless 911 calls back when I was a dispatcher, the tone people use when they're trying not to fall apart. Reese was on the other side of the room, hunched over his ham radio like it was the only thing that mattered in the world. He kept spinning the dial, muttering under his breath, brow furrowed so deep it cast shadows across his face. He'd been at it since we first got here, cursing softly at the static, sometimes scribbling notes I couldn't read. I think it was the only way he felt in control. And then there was me. Kalin. Kale, if we're being less formal. My nerves were shot, but my brain wouldn't stop narrating it all like I was talking to someone else, someone who wasn't even there. It's a reflex that's baked into me. Years of being a dispatcher will do that to you. You learn to stay calm, describe the scene, make sense of chaos, because your voice is often the only lifeline the person on the other end has. I thought I'd left that behind when I quit, but now, in this place, I found myself doing it again in my head, like I was talking to a silent audience. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're listening. I didn't get long to dwell on it. The static came out of nowhere. One moment the bunker was filled with nothing but our breathing and the low hum of the generator. The next, Reese's radio screamed with a burst of white noise so sharp and sudden it made Leo jolt in Jenna's arms. The boy clapped his hands over his ears and whimpered. Jenna hissed through her teeth, rocking him back and forth as if she could shield him from the sound. Reese swore and twisted the knob, slapping the side of the unit like he could beat it back into silence. But the static didn't stop. It swelled, filling the room with a jagged hiss that raised goosebumps on my arms. Then the lights flickered. The bulbs overhead buzzed and dimmed, the shadows in the room stretching long and warped before the lights sputtered back, colder than before, almost green at the edges. My stomach knotted. The generator's steady hum faltered for a beat and then steadied again. But the sense of something pressing in on us, some weight in the air, didn't go away. That was when the voice came. It wasn't just from Reese's ham set. It spilled from every speaker at once. The old wall-mounted PA, the weather radio Jenna had kept in her bag, even the battered speaker above the shelter door that hadn't crackled to life in years. The voice filled the space, calm and steady and utterly wrong. Emergency alert. This is Prophetus. Attention. The community of Crestfall has been quarantined due to a dimensional incursion. Remain calm. Proceed immediately to designated sanctuary shelters. Avoid all external light sources not of your own making. Maintain silence. Further guidance will follow on frequency 96.7. This is Prophetus. Sanctuary is safety. Repeat, sanctuary is safety. The room froze. Alara's hand flew to her chest like she'd been physically struck. Her lips parted in disbelief, but no sound came out. Jenna's grip on Leo tightened, her face pale and tight, rocking him harder as if the voice itself was a threat. Reese's head snapped toward his radio, his jaw slack, his eyes wide like he couldn't process what he was hearing. And me? I just stood there, listening, every hair on my arms raised. On the surface, the voice sounded comforting, warm, maternal, the kind of tone someone might design if they wanted to soothe a frightened child. But it was too smooth, too measured, each word falling with perfect weight, like a script written by something that understood how humans should sound but didn't quite get it. And under the words, I swear I felt something. Not a sound exactly, but a vibration deep in my chest, like a second message that wasn't for my ears, but for something else inside me. Hunger. That was the only word that came to mind. The words carried it, masked in the calm cadence, but it was there, buried just beneath. My throat tightened. Every instinct told me to speak, to break the silence and warn the others that something was off. But I couldn't. The words stuck fast, and for a heartbeat I almost believed the broadcast. Almost let it wash over me like warm water, like it was something safe. Almost. Because I knew better. Once an emergency broadcast begins, it doesn't stop until the emergency is over. And this one wasn't going to save us. It was going to keep us exactly where we were, in the dark, waiting. And waiting meant feeding time. Nobody moved for a long time after the message ended. The words hung in the bunker like smoke, clinging to the air, impossible to breathe around. The silence afterward felt worse than the broadcast itself, like we were waiting for something else to fill it. It was Leo who finally broke it, not with words, he still hadn't spoken, but with a muffled whimper as he pressed his face into his mother's chest and shook. Jenna kissed the top of his head and whispered, "It's okay, baby. It's okay." Even though we all knew it wasn't. Alara looked at me then, her wide, searching eyes silently asking me to make sense of it. I think she saw me as some kind of anchor, the way people used to when they dialed 911 and heard my voice. They thought the person on the other end of the line must have answers. I wanted to give her one, wanted to say something that would cut through the terror thickening in the room. But my mouth was dry, my throat still locked tight from the broadcast. Reese was the first to move. He leaned over his radio, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the frequency knob back and forth, trying to retrace what had just come through. His voice was low, almost a growl when he finally spoke. That wasn't a normal signal. Jenna snapped her head up, eyes flashing. What the hell does that even mean? It was the government. It has to be. Who else could cut into every damn speaker like that? Reese shook his head sharply. No, you don't get it? I've been listening for 2 days. Nothing, just static, normal interference. Then this? That wasn't a broadcast. It was layered. The words were just the top coat. He stopped, staring down at his dials, his face shadowed in the sickly light. There was something under it. I stiffened. Hunger. That's what I had felt. But before I could speak, Alara reached out, her voice firm but kind. "Reese, maybe it's just stress. We're all on edge. Maybe it only sounded strange." Reese barked a humorless laugh. "I know radio. I've spent half my life on this junk. That wasn't stress." There's a carrier wave underneath her voice, older, heavier. It was there the whole time. Prophetess. That was what the voice had called itself. The word sat like a stone in my chest. It wasn't a human name, not really. It was something chosen to inspire trust, to make people think of visions and guidance and truth. But to me, it sounded like a mask. Alara turned to me then, her face pale, her voice soft. "Kyle, you heard it too, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. They were all looking at me now. Jenna clutching Leo like he might vanish. Alara waiting for reassurance, Reese burning with conviction. My dispatcher's instincts screamed to stay calm, to steady the room, to keep people from panicking. But I couldn't lie. Not about this. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I heard something. Not words, not exactly. But it felt wrong. Like it was under my skin. Like it wanted something from us." The room went silent again. But this time the silence was different. Heavy. Confirmed. Jenna was the first to crack. No, you're both paranoid. It was instructions, that's all. Sanctuary shelters, stay quiet, don't go outside. That's what we've been doing already. Maybe it's just they're watching over us. Maybe the government actually has this under control." She laughed then, but it was the brittle, jagged kind of laugh that comes right before sobbing. Alara put a hand on her shoulder. "Jenna, I want to believe that too, but it doesn't explain why they'd sound like that. Why would an emergency system need to sound so—" She struggled for the word, her lips trembling. "So soothing?" No one had an answer. Hours passed in uneasy silence after that. The generator hummed, the light bulbs buzzed, and every now and then a faint hiss of static rippled through the speakers like the ghost of the broadcast returning. Nobody slept. Jenna sat rocking Leo until her own eyes fluttered with exhaustion. Alara scribbled careful notes of the instructions Prophetess had given, repeating them under her breath like a prayer. Reese sat motionless by his radio, his fingers twitching over the knobs but never turning them. I paced the small space, my thoughts unraveling into that strange narration again, as if I were reporting our situation to some unseen caller. At some point, I found myself whispering it aloud without realizing. "The signal is still here. It's quiet, but it's not gone. It's waiting." Reese's head jerked toward me. "Exactly." I froze, throat tight. "What?" He leaned closer, his eyes wide and dark. "You can feel it too, can't you? Not just hear it, feel it." His voice was a hiss now, like he didn't want the walls to catch his words. "It's in the gaps between the words. It's like a hand pressing on the back of your skull." I didn't answer, because he was right. That night, or what we guessed was night, since time didn't make sense anymore, I dreamt of the voice. It didn't speak words this time. It hummed, low and steady, like a choir made of thousands of throats all breathing together. I dreamt I was floating in that ink-black sky outside the bunker, surrounded by shifting lights that pulsed in rhythm with the hum. For a moment, they were beautiful. So bright they filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt since before the world went dark. And then the warmth turned sharp, like knives pressing against my ribs from the inside, and the hum became a scream. I woke with a gasp, drenched in cold sweat, and realized I hadn't been the only one. Alara was sitting upright, eyes glassy, whispering a name I didn't recognize. Jenna clutched Leo so tightly the boy's small frame trembled. Even Reese looked shaken, his jaw tight, his hands flexing open and shut like he was trying to feel if they were still his own. The speakers crackled again, and every head turned toward them. Prophetess's voice spilled through, calm and steady as before, almost cheerful. "Remain calm. Do not leave your sanctuary. The dark is not safe. Remember, silence keeps you safe. Stay with the voice. The voice will guide you." Alara's breath caught. It knows. Reese stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the concrete. It's learning. Every word we hear, it hears back. This isn't an alert system, it's a lure. The room fell into a panicked quiet. Even Leo lifted his head, his wide eyes glistening with tears. He looked from one adult to another, his lips trembling like he wanted to speak for the first time in days. But before he could, I heard something else, something faint, tucked beneath Prophetess's final words, so low it might have been my imagination. A second voice, younger, weaker, almost childlike. "Kalin," it whispered, "help me." My blood ran cold. "Kalin." The voice was so soft I almost thought I'd imagined it, but the sound crawled down my spine like ice water. I froze in place, staring at the old speaker above the shelter door. The last of Prophetess's words were fading, that calm assurance lingering in the air like perfume. But beneath it, there had been something else. My name, whispered like a plea. Alara noticed the way I stiffened. "What is it?" I opened my mouth, but the words tangled. If I told them I'd heard my name, that it had called to me, would it make it real? My silence was answer enough. Rhys narrowed his eyes at me, suspicion mixing with something like vindication. He knew I'd heard it. Jenna's arms tightened around Leo, and she shook her head, desperate. "Stop! Both of you! Don't you see? You're feeding it. The more you listen, the more it gets in. We just have to ignore it. We have to." But Rhys wasn't listening to her. He was pacing now, running a hand through his hair, muttering under his breath. "Of course. That's how it works. You don't need words if you can feel them. It's empathic. That carrier wave isn't just noise, it's a hook." He turned sharply to me. "Who was it, Kale? What voice did it use?" My chest tightened. I wanted to lie, to say I hadn't heard anything, but the way Alara was looking at me, soft, scared, trusting, made me falter. "It said my name," I admitted quietly. But it wasn't Prophetess. It sounded like a child. Jenna flinched like I'd struck her. She clutched Leo so hard he whimpered in protest, though he didn't pull away. Alara's lips parted in a silent gasp. Rhys cursed under his breath and slammed his hand against the wall. "Damn it, it's inside already. It's reading us. That's why it sounded like that, because it knows what matters to each of us." The silence that followed was suffocating. The thought of something unseen pressing against our thoughts, sifting through our fears, wearing voices like masks. It was worse than the darkness outside. That night, none of us even pretended to sleep. We sat huddled in the bunker, each jump of static from the radio making our nerves fray further. Hours, or maybe just minutes, time felt wrong in the dark, passed before Prophetess's voice returned. "Alara." Her name. This time it wasn't hidden beneath the words. It was right there, soft and clear in the same maternal tone, like a mother calling a child in for dinner. Alara's breath hitched, her eyes darting to the speaker, wide and wet. "Alara, the children need you. They're waiting. They're so afraid. They need your light. Come to them. Sanctuary is safety. Follow the voice." The air in the bunker seemed to freeze solid. Alara shook her head violently, clutching her hands to her ears. No, that's not. I can't." Her voice cracked as tears spilled down her cheeks. "How does it know? How does it know about them?" "Because it's inside you," Rhys snapped, his voice harsh, though his eyes were just as shaken as hers. "It can feel it. Every ounce of empathy, every fear. It tastes it. That's how it feeds." Jenna was whispering something to Leo, but I caught fragments. "Don't listen, baby, don't listen. It's not real." Her voice was shaking too hard to sound convincing. And me, I was narrating it all in my head again, my dispatcher's voice steady even as my heart pounded. "She's breaking. She hears them because she wants to. Her empathy makes her glow like a beacon, and the thing outside is drawn to it like a moth to flame." Prophetess spoke again, and this time it wasn't just a message. It was a sound, soft, distant sobbing, the sound of a child crying. Alara shot to her feet. Rhys grabbed her wrist immediately. "Don't! That's not real!" Her face was a mask of anguish, streaked with tears. "You don't understand. That sounded like Jacob. That was his cry." The name hit me like a hammer. She had never spoken of him, not here in the bunker, but the truth was written all over her face. Jacob, her son, the one she hadn't saved when the darkness fell. "Alara, listen to me," I said, forcing calm into my voice like I was back on the line with a panicked caller. "That's not Jacob. It's using him. If you go out there, you won't be helping him. You'll just be feeding it." Her eyes flicked to mine, searching, pleading, but the sobbing sound didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, echoing off the walls of the bunker until even I felt my chest ache with the need to answer it. It was so real. Reese yanked her back down onto the chair, holding her shoulders. "You think you'll find your son out there? You'll find a husk. That's what you'll be. Empty, drained, still breathing, but gone. That's what it leaves behind." The word husk landed heavy. None of us had seen one yet, but the stories had spread before the darkness swallowed Crestfall. People found slumped in their homes, eyes glassy, faces frozen in their final terror, still breathing but empty, alive in body, dead in everything else. Alara broke into sobs, burying her face in her hands. Prophetess's voice softened, dripping with syrupy sympathy. "Poor Alara. Poor child. We will keep you safe. Sanctuary is safety. Sanctuary is waiting." Reese slammed the radio off, but the voice didn't stop. It kept bleeding from the wall speakers, from Jenna's weather radio, from the PA above the door. The bunker was drowning in it. That was when Reese snapped. He grabbed his toolkit and began tearing into the wiring with shaking hands, muttering curses under his breath. "If I can't block it, I'll burn it out. I'll cut the signal at the source." "Wait," I said sharply. "What if we need it?" He glared at me like I'd just betrayed him. "Need it? That's not a lifeline, it's a leash. You don't put your neck back in the noose once you've seen the rope." But even as he said it, even as I wanted to agree with him, the whisper returned. This time, not Ilara's name. Not mine. "Leo." Jenna gasped like the air had been stolen from her lungs. Leo's head snapped up for the first time in days, his wide, terrified eyes fixed on the speaker. The voice was soft, coaxing, warm with false love. "Leo, sweetheart, it's safe now. Come outside. Mommy's waiting. We can be together again. Sanctuary is safety. Come to me." Jenna clutched him against her chest, sobbing. Don't listen, baby, don't you dare listen." But the boy was trembling violently, his lips parting as though he wanted to answer, the first sound he'd make in days. His small hand twitched, reaching toward the door, and for the first time I realized with perfect clarity what the voice was doing. It wasn't just feeding, it was farming, herding us, keeping us in the dark, calling us by name until one of us broke. We weren't survivors. We were cattle. The realization settled in my chest like a stone. We weren't huddled in this bunker because we had escaped. We were still here because something wanted us to stay alive just long enough to be devoured. Every whisper, every name, every lure. It wasn't random. It was methodical, systematic. Prophetess wasn't guiding us toward safety. She was keeping us docile, waiting until we were ripe enough to pluck. Leo's hand was still trembling in the air, reaching for a door that would swallow him whole. Jenna clutched him tighter, her tears streaking into his hair as she rocked him, whispering frantic nothings. Ilara's sobs had gone quiet, her face blank with exhaustion. Reese kept tearing wires from the wall like a man possessed, sparks jumping dangerously close to his hands. "Stop," I said finally, my voice sharper than I intended. "Reese, stop for a second." He whipped around, his face slick with sweat and wild fury. "What? You'd rather sit here while it sings lullabies into our skulls? You heard it, heard what it's doing. It's keeping us in here like veal in a crate." "I know," I said quickly, forcing myself to meet his eyes, to sound steady even though my hands were shaking. "But ripping it apart won't fix that. If this thing has reach across every speaker, every frequency, then tearing wires out of one wall isn't going to silence it. We need to know what we're fighting before we can stop it." "Fighting it?" Reese laughed bitterly, a jagged sound. "You don't fight gods, Kalin. You hide from them. You pray they don't notice you. And we've already been noticed." That silenced the room. His words felt too true, but something in me refused to accept that. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe madness, maybe just the voice of the dispatcher who'd always had to find answers, even when the answers didn't exist. People depended on me to stay calm, to find a way. And if I gave up now, what was the point of surviving at all? "Alara," I said softly, drawing her back from the fog she was sinking into. "When it called your name, what did you feel? Was it only the voice? Or was there something else?" She blinked, her swollen eyes meeting mine slowly. "It wasn't just sound," she whispered. "It was like warmth, like someone's hand on my shoulder, like I wasn't alone anymore. For a second it almost felt good." Her lips trembled. "And that's what terrifies me, that I wanted to follow it." Jenna flinched, clutching Leo closer. Reese muttered a curse under his breath. And me, I just felt the pieces sliding together in the worst possible way. "It's not just broadcasting, it's stimulating," I said. "Neural resonance. Not sound, not exactly. It's inside the nervous system, pulling at whatever makes us feel safe. That's why it sounds different to each of us. To me it was a child. To you, your son. To Leo, his mother." Reese's face hardened, but behind the anger there was recognition. He knew I was right. "Which means the sanctuaries," he trailed off, his jaw tightening. "They're not shelters," I finished for him. "They're feeders, places it draws us to willingly, where we walk in smiling because we think we're safe. And once we're inside..." We didn't need to finish the sentence. We'd all heard stories. People who made it to sanctuaries, never seen again. Others who staggered back out days later, husks in human skin. The bunker's silence was suddenly too loud, every creak of metal and drip of condensation heavy with the knowledge that we were only delaying the inevitable. The seraphim had noticed us. It was calling us by name, and it would not stop until one of us answered. Reese slammed the toolbox shut with a final frustrated snap. "Then we move. Sitting here is just waiting for the slaughter. If Prophetess wants us in sanctuaries, we go the other way." "Go where?" Jenna demanded, her voice shrill with panic. "It's pitch black out there. You know what happens to people who wander into the dark. They don't come back. At least here we have walls. At least here we're together." "Together doesn't mean safe," Reese shot back. "It means crowded, easy pickings. You want Leo to be the next voice it calls? Because that's what's coming. You heard it." Leo's little hand clutched at Jenna's shirt, his face buried in her chest. But I saw his eyes, wide, wet, glimmering with something that wasn't just fear, it was longing. Prophetess's voice slid back in then, as if summoned by our despair. "Leo, sweet boy, it's cold where you are, isn't it? So dark. Come to me, and I'll keep you warm. I'll keep you safe. Mommy's waiting. Sanctuary is safety. Sanctuary is waiting." Jenna screamed wordlessly and threw the weather radio against the wall, shattering it into pieces. But the voice didn't stop. It just poured from another speaker, then another, until the bunker was saturated with it. I felt it then, too. Heat blooming in my chest, false and sweet, like the touch of a hand I hadn't felt in years. My mother's voice, soft, familiar. "Kalin, come home, honey. It's okay now. You don't have to fight anymore." My throat tightened. For a moment, I wanted nothing more than to obey, to step into the darkness, find her waiting arms, let the fear drain out of me like water. But then I looked at Alara, curled in on herself, shaking, her nails digging bloody crescents into her palms. I looked at Jenna, trembling but clutching Leo like he was the last real thing in the world. I looked at Reese, pacing with rage and fear, trying to hold on to the belief that logic would protect him. We were still alive. That was real. I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood, grounding myself in pain. "We need a plan," I said, forcing the words out through a clenched jaw. "If we stay, it wins. If we run blind, it wins. There has to be a third way." Reese stopped pacing, glaring at me. "And what's that? Pray?" "Not pray," I said slowly. "Listen, it's using the emergency broadcast system. That means there's still infrastructure out there, still transmitters. If we can reach one of them, we can trace the signal back to where it's coming from. We find the source, and maybe, just maybe, we kill the voice before it kills us." The others stared at me. Alara blinked, some faint spark of hope returning to her eyes. Jenna looked doubtful, but desperation was already eroding her resistance. Even Reese, cynical as he was, seemed to weigh it. "And if the source isn't a transmitter?" he said after a moment. "What if the source is everywhere? What if it's not in the machines but behind them?" I swallowed hard. Then we still learned something. Better to die looking for the truth than to sit here waiting to be harvested. The word hung heavy in the air. Harvested. None of us wanted to say it, but that was the truth. We weren't survivors. We were crops. Finally, Reese nodded. "At first light we move." But there was no first light anymore, only endless dark. We sat in silence for hours after that, listening to the whispers claw at our resolve. Alara muttered Jacob's name under her breath like a prayer. Jenna hummed tunelessly into Leo's hair, rocking him until he trembled himself to sleep. Reese cleaned his tools with obsessive precision, and I sat awake, eyes burning, repeating one thought over and over like a mantra. We're not cattle. Not yet. When the speakers crackled to life again, it wasn't Prophetus this time. It was something worse. Kalin. Not whispered, not coaxing. Just my name, repeated again and again, rising in volume until it filled the room like thunder. Each syllable vibrated through my bones, my skull, shaking something loose in me. And then it laughed. The laughter echoed through the bunker, like it came from the walls themselves, a jagged metallic sound that rattled the loose bolts in the ceiling. It wasn't the laugh of a person. It wasn't even the laugh of something trying to sound human anymore. It was a distortion, a jagged clipping of tones played just wrong enough to scrape the inside of my skull raw. My stomach lurched as if I'd been punched, and for a moment I thought I might black out. The others were reeling too. Alara clamped her hands over her ears and screamed, though I knew it wasn't loud enough outside our heads to warrant that kind of reaction. Reese staggered back into the tool bench, scattering pliers and bolts across the floor, his face twisted into a mask of rage and helplessness. Jenna curled over Leo, her entire body shaking, her lips moving silently as she whispered something. Prayer or promise? I couldn't tell. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the laughter stopped. The silence after was worse. It pressed down on us like the bunker itself had been buried under 10 more feet of concrete. Every breath, every shuffle of fabric, every tiny sound we made felt like an intrusion. I found myself holding my breath, as though exhaling too loudly might draw the voice back. When it returned, it wasn't loud. It wasn't distorted. It was intimate, close. You will come, all of you. In the end, you will crawl, and you will beg. The radio sparked once, then died with a faint whine. The lights flickered. The air smelled of something acrid, like burnt insulation. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Reese broke the silence. His voice was hollow, all the bravado and rage from earlier drained away. We have to leave. Tonight. Not in the morning. Now. Jenna's eyes widened in terror. You can't be serious. Out there? In the dark? You think it's safer in here? Reese shot back, his voice raw. It knows where we are. It's not trying to get us to leave. It's keeping us calm until it's ready. You heard it. It's done playing. He wasn't wrong. Every instinct in me screamed that staying meant death. Maybe not right away, but soon. I forced myself to stand, my legs stiff from hours of sitting tense. "We head for the old relay station by Route 9, I said. "It's close enough we can make it if we move fast. If there's any place left with working equipment, it'll be there. We trace the signal or we find a way to jam it. Either way, it's better than waiting here to be bled dry." Alara looked up at me then, her face pale, her lips chewed raw. "And if the relay's gone? If it's like the sanctuaries?" I hesitated, then answered honestly, "Then at least we die trying." That broke something in the room. Maybe it was resolve, maybe it was just resignation, but none of them argued again. We packed quickly, quietly. What little food was left, a couple of flashlights with batteries already weak, Reese's tools. Jenna wrapped Leo in 2 sweaters, his small frame swallowed by fabric, his eyes glassy but awake. He didn't speak, not once. He just clung to her neck like he knew what waited outside. When the heavy steel door finally groaned open, the darkness beyond looked almost alive. The air rushed in damp and sharp, carrying with it the faint smell of rot. My flashlight beam cut a narrow path through the gloom, catching dust motes and nothing more. I almost wished it would land on something, on proof the world still existed outside our bunker. But it was emptier than any night I'd ever seen. We stepped out one by one, our breaths white in the freezing air. The town was unrecognizable. Crestfall had always been small, quiet, but alive. Neighbors waving from porches, the smell of coffee drifting from the diner, kids riding their bikes down cracked sidewalks. Now it was a carcass. Windows shattered, cars abandoned at odd angles, streetlights bent like broken ribs. The snow had fallen unevenly, like drifts of ash, muffling every step we took. The silence was wrong. Too heavy, too expectant. Every sound we made seemed to echo, even though there was nothing for it to bounce against. "Stay close," I whispered, though my voice carried in the dead air more than I wanted. We moved in a tight cluster down what used to be Main Street, flashlights cutting overlapping cones of weak light, shadows stretched long and unnatural against the ruins. The further we went, the more I felt it. The pull, not physical, not something you could fight with strength, but a pressure in the back of my skull. Like invisible hands were guiding my head to turn, my feet to step toward a direction I couldn't see. Alara stumbled once, murmuring Jacob's name, her eyes glassy. I grabbed her arm and shook her hard enough to make her gasp. "Stay with us. Don't listen. Don't even think in its direction." She nodded frantically, tears spilling down her cheeks, and we kept moving. It didn't take long before the whispers returned. Faint at first, carried on the wind like distant singing. Not Prophetus this time, not the voice of safety. This was different. Lower, hungrier. "Closer, closer." Leo whimpered and buried his face deeper into Jenna's neck. She squeezed him tight, whispering over and over, "Don't listen, baby. Don't listen." But I could see her lips trembling, the way her steps faltered with every murmur of her name in that chorus. I tried to focus on the road, on the cracked asphalt half buried under snow and debris, but the voices crawled into my ears no matter how I turned my head. For every step we took, they grew clearer, more confident. "Kalin, right path, left path, come and see, come and see." The flashlight flickered, stuttered, then died completely. I smacked it against my palm, praying it was just the batteries, but it was no use. Darkness swallowed us whole. "Alara, light, now!" Reese barked. She fumbled with hers, the beam finally flaring to life, weak but enough to carve a trembling circle around us. For a moment, the light caught on something across the street. A figure. I froze. It stood perfectly still. Too still. Tall, stretched, its limbs wrong. The beam wavered over it, and for half a second I saw its face. or what should have been a face. Instead, it was smooth, pale, featureless, and yet somehow I felt it smiling at me. "Alara, move the light," I whispered, but she couldn't. She was staring, transfixed, her arm frozen. The figure tilted its head in a slow, unnatural arc. Then it took one step forward, not toward Alara, toward me. I ripped the flashlight from her hand and swung the beam away. The figure was gone, just an empty street, but my skin crawled with the certainty it hadn't vanished, it had only hidden, waiting for the light to falter again. "Don't stop," I said hoarsely. "Don't ever stop moving the light." We pressed on, faster now, fear sharpening our steps. The relay tower loomed in the distance, a jagged silhouette against the black sky, its skeletal frame leaning but intact. Each second it grew larger, more tangible, a promise of either salvation or damnation. But the voices didn't want us reaching it. They rose higher, screaming our names, layering on top of each other until it was a cacophony. And beneath it, the laughter returned, broken, mechanical, endless. When we reached the base of the tower, the ground was littered with bodies. Not fresh, not rotting, just husks, skin clinging to bone, mouths open in silent screams. Some clutched radios, others had clawed their own eyes out. Jenna collapsed to her knees, clutching Leo so tightly I thought she might crush him. Reese swore violently, his face pale, his resolve cracking. Alara just whispered, "Jacob," over and over like she'd forgotten we were even there. I forced myself not to look at the corpses as I pushed toward the stairwell leading up the tower. The steel groaned under my weight, but it held. "We climb," I said. "We find the source, or we die trying." Behind me, Prophetess's voice rose again, louder than ever, spilling from every speaker still clinging to the tower. "Welcome home, Kalin. Sanctuary awaits." The tower groaned like a dying beast as we began the climb, every footstep rattling through its rusted bones. The steel was slick with frost, my hands burning as they clung to the freezing rail. The higher we climbed, the louder the voices became. They weren't just coming from the speakers anymore. They were inside the metal itself, vibrating through the frame, shuddering through my teeth and bones. Alara was right behind me, muttering Jacob's name like a mantra, her eyes locked on the steel steps so she wouldn't have to look at the hollow corpses below. Reese followed her, his jaw clenched, his knuckles white around the pipe he'd carried since the bunker. Below them, Jenna carried Leo on her back, whispering to him through clenched teeth, her voice raw but steady. "Almost there, baby. Almost there." The climb felt endless. My breath came ragged, frosting in the air. The higher we went, the stronger the pull in my head grew, dragging me forward, begging me to stop fighting and simply surrender. My legs trembled, not just from exhaustion, but from the temptation to let go, to fall into the abyss below where all the whispering would stop. Then, with one last step, we reached the top platform. The relay array loomed over us like a crown of thorns, wires jutting in tangled veins, dishes cracked but somehow still humming with energy. At the center was the source, a blackened console, its surface scorched and warped, but alive with light. The screen glowed faint green, letters flickering across it in jagged rhythm. "Welcome, Kalin." The breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just calling my name now. It had been waiting. This wasn't random. Reese stumbled forward, raising the pipe like he meant to smash the console to pieces. "This is it. This is the thing. We end it now." But the moment he swung, the air exploded with a high-pitched shriek. The speakers above us screamed. The metal around us screamed. Even my skull screamed. Reese dropped the pipe, clutching his head, blood running from his nose. Alara collapsed to her knees. Jenna screamed as Leo convulsed on her back. I staggered forward, falling against the console. The screen pulsed, the words shifting. "Do not strike. The seraphim must be heard. For a moment, I thought I saw my own reflection in the screen, but it wasn't me. It was taller, thinner, its face elongated, eyes hollow voids. My stomach turned. The voice of Prophetus rose again, but it wasn't distant now. It wasn't coming from speakers. It was right behind me. "Kalin, you are the signal. You are the bridge. Give yourself and they will live." I spun around, but no one was there. Only my friends, writhing in agony, trying to block out the unbearable sound. Alara's eyes locked on me, filled with terror and pleading. "Don't listen," she gasped. "Please, don't." But the pull was too strong. The console was warm now under my palms, like skin. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were thoughts, invading my head, sliding under my memories like oil. I saw flashes, crestfall before the collapse, neighbors smiling, children laughing, the world intact. Then I saw them again, those same neighbors, eyeless, bleeding from their ears, kneeling in rows before a massive tower of bone and light. The seraphim. It wasn't a creature, not in the way we understood. It was a signal given shape, a song made flesh, a frequency that stripped away will until nothing was left but worship. And it had chosen me not because I was strong, but because I was receptive. Every time I'd resisted, every time I'd felt its pull, I had proven I could hear it more clearly than the others. I was the antenna, the vessel. The console pulsed again. "Offer yourself. They will be free." Behind me, Reese coughed blood, his voice breaking. "Don't you do it. Don't you fucking dare. That's what it wants. It doesn't free anyone. It just feeds." Jenna sobbed, holding Leo tighter, her body rocking. "Kalin, please, please, don't let it take you." Alara reached for me with shaking hands, her nails digging into the steel floor. "We can fight it together. You don't have to." But I knew. I knew with a clarity that burned like fire in my chest. If I didn't give myself, it would take them anyway. One by one, it would strip them until they were husks like the corpses below, kneeling forever in silence. The only choice left was how much suffering they'd endure before the end. I pressed my forehead against the console. The warmth was searing now, like hot iron branding my skin. The voices screamed in triumph, thousands of them, merging into a single terrible harmony. "Yes, yes, yes." And then I spoke. My voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the chorus like a blade. "Take me, leave them." The effect was immediate. The shrieking stopped. The air went still, the cold rushing back in. The console flared with blinding light, and for a moment I saw nothing but white. Then the pain began. It wasn't physical, not like cuts or burns. It was inside, in my thoughts, my memories, my very sense of self. The seraphim tore through me, unraveling who I was thread by thread, pulling apart Kalin until only the raw frequency of my being was left. I screamed, but the scream wasn't sound anymore. It was data, transmitted through every wire, every dish, every shattered antenna. I felt myself spread, pouring into the sky, into the static that blanketed the earth. Below me, I dimly sensed the others rise. The pressure on their skulls lifted, the whispers gone. I saw Alara's tears, Reese's hollow stare, Jenna clutching Leo as he breathed without convulsions for the first time in hours. They were free, for now, but I wasn't with them anymore. I was the signal. The last thing I saw before my body collapsed against the console was the green screen pulsing one final message. Seraphim frequency, online. And then I was everywhere, the static that hummed in every broken radio, the hiss between channels, the silence after midnight. I was the warning and the lure, the voice that told survivors where to go, where to kneel. My words weren't my own anymore. They were the seraphim's, but spoken in my tone, with my memory of comfort behind them. "This is not a test. Sanctuary awaits. Follow my voice. Follow Kalin." Somewhere far below, I felt Jenna screaming my name. begging me to come back. Reese punching the console until his hands bled. Alara whispering thank you, through sobs. But I couldn't answer, because I was answering everyone else. The world shifted. The tower pulsed with light, stronger than before, reaching further than Crestfall, spilling into the night like a beacon. Across the ruins of towns and cities, survivors lifted their heads, hearing my call, and step by step, they began to walk toward the light, toward me, toward the seraphim. And in the endless static, beneath the layers of distortion, I laughed, not because I wanted to, not because it was me, but because the seraphim wanted them to believe it was still human. And maybe, in some hollow way, it still was.